friend of mine, and her name is Lee Kessler. She has been a Hollywood actress in both TV and movies. She's been a stage actress. She's done producing and all kinds of things. She's got lots of credits to her name, but she has written 4 books in a series, and today she wants to talk to us about imagination. So help me welcome Lee Kessler. And she drove all the way over here from Montana.
Thank you very much. Let me get set up. Well, it's good to see you all. Hold on, let me just, I wasn't quite set up.
There's a stand for the microphone if you need it, right next to you.
Yeah, I probably won't, but
Oh, okay.
this is how I do notes here today. Plus, I'm gonna be a little bit different. But first of all, it's good to see you again.
Yes.
You've changed your name and everything since I was last here. And this is a great location for you, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and as he said, it is air conditioned in here, I think. Yeah, you can always tell with the guys. They always are running hotter. But to me, it's very comfortable. Are you all comfortable? Okay, good. And I see familiar faces from the last time, but there's some new faces that I see. So it's good to meet you. And we'll talk a little bit today, and then Sue tells me that we'll do a little bit of Q&A, and then you get refreshments and some other things. But I appreciate your introduction, Sue, and we have known each other a very long time in some other business ventures. But as you know, she's a prolific author. But all of you I see all of your work over there, and I remember from last time, and you write in different genres as well. This particular series is in suspense novels, political fiction that turned out to be prophetic, meaning that the story as it was written played out in real life. So the world you're living in today is in there, and that's the exact route from left to right of how we got where we are in the United States and globally today. So I ended up telling stories before they happened, and grateful that I did, actually. But that has led to a very interesting journey in many aspects. You know, when you're interrogated by intelligence because they think you're a terrorist, that's, you know, you kind of hit the mark. Because the novels are told through the point of view of the actual, real life, real threat enemies, and I nailed it in every category over 20 years. So, but that has to do with imagination. So I'm not going to talk to you about the books. They're here, you can get them, and they're terrific reads, but that opened the door to a lot of things. But dealing with authors today and friends that you may have with you, I wanted to do something a little bit different today, because all of you have imagination and you're obviously using it all the time with your writing. But I want to just explore it maybe in a little more depth, because in addition to being an author, I'm also a podcaster, and I also write commentary that gets reprinted a great deal. But imagination is such an important thing, not just for artists. Now the key thing, you're all artists, so I know you know that imagination is the purview of the artist, but it's not the monopoly of the artist. And so I'm just going to explore a little bit with you, and I think it may inspire you, may comfort you a lot, what we talk about today, and even broaden your reach a little bit. Because all of us, in my view, all of this is my opinion, of course, but in my view, all of us in life need to be artists in life, not just artists in our profession or in our careers or activities. And I've had the privilege in my life, I've had a very diverse background, but I've had the privilege of meeting some incredible people that were artists in life. And because we all live our lives as well as do our writing. And that factor of imagination can make such a difference to how we're impacting in our families, how we're impacting on our jobs, what effect we're producing in our communities, and so on. And I'm very much a big picture, broad person that likes to go into all those categories. But as I look at you today, you are artists, and I trust that many of you are probably artists in life. And the reason imagination is so important is that imagination creates the future. Now, not everybody in the world understands that, but I know artists do. You might not know exactly, you create the future, but you also lead. A culture is only as great as its dreams, and its dreams are created by its artists. And because artists, in order to create anything, have to use imagination, you actually are in a position of leading. So and you might not know that, you might think you're powerless or not, but quite the opposite if you look through history to Harriet Beecher Stowe. Her writing led to ending slavery in the United States. You look at Solzhenitsyn and what we learned about communism. So writers, Orwell, Lord knows, we're dealing with all that now, but you create the future. But it isn't just the writer who does that. But keep that in mind, that it's imagination that creates the future, always has and always will. Now, it isn't just enough to have imagination. But if someone has the will to do action and create a better world, but if it's not combined with aesthetics, with dreams, and with sanity, where the artist comes in, then things that people want to do and things they want to fix or things they want to have happen don't happen. It's the introduction of what you deal with in yourself all the time, your own aesthetics, your sense of aesthetics. When you even create a cover, you're dealing with so much with the art, not just the writing in it, but it's your dreams. How many of you write a type of fiction or tell stories that you have designed to inspire the reader or uplift them? Raise your hands if you have. That's what you like to do. Well, you're one of those leaders. Now, whether other people recognize that or not, you're one of the ones in best position to lead, because all of us, when we're writing, should be, in my opinion, have determined what effect it is that we want to produce on the reader. Just like when someone creates a screenplay, any artist is there to produce an effect. And the better they do it, the better the effect is produced and it's received and carried forward. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. But there's a tendency to kind of get stuck in the past or even stuck in the present. Now, hopefully we're all in the present today. We're not stuck in the past. But when we're in the present, would you agree with me that today's society, and whether it's your grandkids or you yourself or family and friends, that we're just bombarded with data? It's a constant inflow of data. And even if you're doing a type of reading where you have to do quite a bit of research, maybe to write what you want to write, the problem with data is this. Remember that I said this. It's in the past. If it weren't, it wouldn't be data. It's already happened. And if we're just probing around a little bit to pick up something here and there, that's one thing. But we are bombarded in every direction by data and facts and counterfacts and not true facts and true facts. It is, but also just trillions of pieces of information that are available. And that can really constipate people's minds. But more importantly, the society would be lucky to be in the present with all of that. Because you take in too much stuff from the past, you can get stuck in the past. And it's hard to create a future if you're stuck in the past. You understand what I'm saying? So when you're in the present, your goal has probably always been to create a vision, whether it's as a writer, but that's also true of painters, musicians. There's something that they see, a world that they see, and that you see, that you are now putting yourself through the trouble of finding the words, finding the story, finding the way of communicating it. So we need to be in the present, but our role is to create the future and to lead others into it. It's kind of like existing scene versus ideal scene. Their absolutes are unattainable, but I think we'd probably all agree that we could be better, the world could be better, that there's an ideal scene in any arena in your life, something that'd be great if I had the money over here, it'd be great if I lived there. Whatever it is, there's an ideal scene, then there's where we actually are. That's the existing place. So our goal as people who grow and keep growing throughout our whole life is to improve from where we are to where we want to be. And we keep growing all of our life. I mean, I look around and there's people who've lived as many decades as I have in this room, all right? So you've been growing all your life and you're still continuing to create. So, but the task as an artist is to help others go from the existing scene, which they may hate or be upset with, or be in fear about, or in doubt about, and go from there to actually making things happen that improve the situation and get to a more ideal world, if that makes sense. So what I thought I'd do is want to go over the definition of imagination, a couple of them that are so important, and that I think then we can broaden out from even you as writers. This is from Oxford. Imagination, forming a new idea or image or concept of objects not present to the senses or not experienced before. Now that obviously falls into the world of inventors as well, anybody who's dealing in that arena, but the definition is forming a new idea or image or concept of exterior objects not present to the senses and not experienced before. For those of you who write fiction, your idea, probably taking people into something they haven't experienced before. I know I did. I had no idea where I was going to impact, but I had no idea of where I was taking people in those stories. But here's another definition. Ability of the mind to be creative or resourceful. Now that applies in every aspect of our life, doesn't it? Our imagination, which you've cultivated and are continuing to develop, is the thing that will enable you to be creative and resourceful in any arena of your life, any organization you're part of, whatever your family is, whatever your careers are. So the idea behind imagination is something does not exist, and then you imagine something. Imagination brings it forth. Nothing would come forth if someone did not imagine it first. So that got me thinking about problem solving. You know, when you look at it, problems stop everything, don't they? That's the very nature of it. You have a force and a counterforce, or a thought or a counter thought. You're kind of stuck in the middle like that. But if people are only stuck in the present or the past on problems, they can't get to solutions. Only someone with a strong, active imagination can unstick people and get them to solutions, and that's your territory. That is your purview. As I said, it's not your monopoly, because we're not the only creative people out there. But it is your role, in my opinion, that it is our role to help people be able to solve problems. And that, I think, is a lot of the why behind writing. Those writers, I think, who use and trust their imagination, whether they're writers or whether they're an artist per se, or whether they're not even in the arts, but when they use imagination and trust it, are the ones that can lead. And so what I want to share with you, as I think I said it at the beginning, is that there are no better people in a position to lead than the artists. And I'm in the film industry, as she mentioned, have been for decades. And I had the opportunity to play in a great many series. We did Roots, which was the first mini-series ever done. Well, the author had written the book, but it inspired both the producers and the network to do something that had never ever been done, which was a 10-part mini-series. There's a whole other story attached to that. But they had a vision of the effect they wanted to produce on the audience. It was already, well, the book wasn't quite out when we were already ready to go into filming, but they knew the effect it was going to have. And it had it on more than just the black population in the country. Everybody in the United States got interested in their roots because of that. And so when I look at problems and the strength of the artist, and I've just been in so many projects where it was the imagination of the screenwriter or the author, whether they're doing an adaptation, that led somebody to get an idea that they could then bring up, even if it was in another genre like film or television, and it wasn't in the written word, but we're combining it all together, they could make an impact that elevated people. I personally don't do projects that bring people down. I have absolutely turned it down. My resume does not reflect something where I did it just to make money. I personally said, if it hurts the American family, I'm not doing it. If it degrades men in America, I'm not doing it. My whole role was to take people up. But as I look at the world that your young grandkids here, many of you have grandkids, you're somewhat concerned about that generation and all that kind of stuff. Well, there is danger there, because when we let everything be incoming, this is not you. You're busy writing and you're getting your works out. But when other people, everything is incoming. Everything is incoming to you, whether it's through television, film, video, games, whatever, social media, it's all incoming. So not only is there the volume of data, but there's also a colossal amount of emotion in there. But just from the artistic viewpoint, if it's all incoming, you're embracing somebody else's reality. Somebody else used their imagination and created something. They got it all put together and they sent it out to you, or your kids, or your grandkids, or your neighbors. When it's all inbound, you're taking on the reality of someone else. You're in a position and trying always, I'm assuming, to get your works read. I'll be ending with something strong on that that's good. I think it'll give you a lot of confidence. But you have to kind of reverse that flow. And I think in my life, I was kind of blessed. I had no toys. Is there anybody else in the room who had no toys? You grew up in a family where you didn't have money for toys? Yeah, we had no money. My dad was a brilliant educator in New York State, but he never took a lot for himself. He made certain that all the students got it, and the teachers got it, and the community got it. And my mom was at home, and he had 2 boys in college at an expensive men's college, and then one headed into med school. And I came kind of along as a surprise very much later, and we had I had no toys. So, but my mom, they put me on the floor and give me some pots and pans. So I would play with pots and pans. You know, you don't have to spend a fortune on all this Lego stuff, I'll tell you. And I know that Legos allows you to create a lot of stuff out of it, but, and children, just watch children and you'll see imagination to the max. And that's why I got such a kick when you were telling me that Ray's over there and he watches all the little kiddos at the park, because the kids' imagination. But so I had pots and pans and I made things with that. So I was always just, whatever environment I was in, I was imagining things. As I look back now, I was imagining stories. Every day I created a whole new play in my mind. Then I started bringing it into reality. And one day I decided to find out what a circus was. I lived in a small town in western New York. My dad came home one day and I had turned the whole yard into a circus and was charging everybody a quarter to get into it. I had created a circus out of nothing. But that's the nature of imagination, isn't it? So the problem in society is that children innately, we all have it innately. It isn't like you have to create imagination in yourself. You were born with it. You have it. It's a question of how much you trust it or develop it or have faith in it. But children have it, and they're exercising it all the time. But there's a tendency, sometimes with parents, sometimes with grandparents, or the school system, to kind of beat it out of them, you know, and get real, you know, when the child is in the best position to imagine things. But as I look back on that, I'm grateful that I had no toys, because then progressively through my life, I would just imagine and bring something up out of nothing. And my career and background, you know, kind of displays that. But for all things in life, not just your writing, for all things, you imagine first, and what you do with it from there then leads to the creating, and that brings about the object, whether it's a novel, whether it's a car, whatever it is. Now, there is a key element that can be missing in there. If you're kind of an idealistic person, I am. I write about the future. This is the world we can have, but it really revealed where we are. But I write solutions in my novels, so they're very hopeful and very optimistic, because I look for what we can have. But when you are a person who's expressing an idea, whether it's in fiction or nonfiction, and you want people to take on your idea, how it goes from your imagination through your work to your readers is that you have to communicate, not just in the written word. So the more books that sell, obviously, you have more readers that can be impacted by what you've written. But also as you speak about it and as you learn to market your works with that. Because with a new idea coming up that somebody's imagined, especially if it's going to be a positive change in the society, the imagination comes first. Now you got to find other people to go into agreement with you. And, you know, one person at a time, one reader at a time, one viewer at a time, they go into agreement with you. As that ripples and continues on out there, eventually the quantity of people that are in agreement with that new idea, it comes into existence just by the quantity of the people. That is how life works. You by yourself aren't going to be able to do it. I by myself am not going to be able to change the country and the world. I could. Those who read it and write reviews about it go, this is a world changer, these novels. This changes the game. Well, that doesn't happen until enough people have said, this thing will work. This changes the game. This has changed my perception. But that will be true of all of your work, no matter what you're doing now or in the future. That the more agreement you get from others on your point of view, which means whatever you wrote impacted them enough that they agreed with you. Okay? They didn't just put it down and never remember it. They didn't throw it in the trash. I half expected half the country to throw that in the trash. They didn't. But the more agreement, the more life the idea takes on. And eventually it ceases to be just your imagination. It becomes reality. And I was thinking about that in the context of the stamina that the artist has to have. I'm talking to writers today, not filmmakers or actors, but every artist has to have stamina. You don't have to raise your hands, but have you ever had a point where you said, I don't know if I want to continue? Why should I continue? Okay, it can happen, all right? Now, you have to know your importance in your role. That's where I started. You're actually, whether you know it or not, leading the culture. You're leading the culture. The better you are at it and the more agreement you get, the better you can lead. But also having faith. But there is a direct relationship between imagination and ability to produce, to create, to work, and survive. So you've got active imaginations. Trust that. Inspire in your families, in your communities, at work, in your churches. Inspire that imagination to be developed, because the more people that we can all help raise their imaginations, the greater their ability will be to produce, to create, to work, and survive. So there's a lot of responsibility that we carry, isn't there? And I think you know it, but also that's the fun of it. Because how many of you write in fiction mostly? Almost everybody in the room. That's fine. Especially with fiction, because that's pure imagination. That's definitely coming up as pure imagination. But if you write, like I do, about contemporary, that it's the history of the 21st century is what that is the story of. Well, that's fiction, using my imagination. But one of the things I love about fiction is the reader has to use his imagination. I'm not trying to shove a lot of facts and data down people's throats. They got enough of that already, as I mentioned earlier. I want, and that's what I love about reading in general, especially with fiction. You know, they have to fill in additional, they have to use their mind. What does that room really look like? You might describe it, but they have to exercise their imagination. So I want to affirm with you that if you're writing fiction and you have readers reading, however big your readership is, you are stimulating the imagination of the reader. He has to, you describe a character, he has to fill in all the rest on the character. So little by little through fiction, we can raise up the imagination of those around us. And anybody's worth, whether it's your worth and your activities and value, depend upon the greatness of your imagination. But if we're the only imaginative people out there and we let everybody else just stay stuck in the present and the past, we're going to have a hard road to go with that. So the more we can stimulate their imagination, it's why I don't overwrite the details. These are suspense novels in particular genre, but I don't like to, I compared with Tom Clancy, but only because of the genre. But he wrote very heavy, very detailed, left very little to the imagination of the reader. I leave a tremendous amount to the imagination of the reader. So they're going page turning on it, but I wanted that because I had learned in my life, probably as an actress, that if I stimulated the reader's imagination, they might have far more power than I would have if they embraced the truth of it or the idea of it they could carry forward. And so greatness of imagination combines with brilliance and sanity. The most imaginative people and brilliant people, if you put them all together, sanity, brilliance, and imagination, you're going to have something really happening. We've all met people that were brilliant and totally insane, all right? And we've probably met some people that were imaginative, but they hadn't done that earlier stuff that I was talking about of what effect am I trying to produce out there? It's just all about They're just imaginative. But the action necessary to bring it in reality, they never bothered to look up the definition of imagination. It's not just a thought or an idea, it carries forward. Now that transitions over to two other categories, certainly to inventors. You know, when I was looking over even our history in this country, take an Alexander Graham Bell. If something doesn't exist, but we know it and use it today, there was a point when it didn't exist. Somebody had an idea in their mind, a vision like you guys have. You get a vision of something that could be, and then you somehow bring it about. That's the nature of every inventor. So you have a lot in common with the great inventors. You have a lot in common with the genius scientists. We are not like separate categories that can't deal with one another. And so take an Thomas Edison with all that he did. They had this idea, and then they had to go from their imagination to finding a way to bring it into existence. Look at the Wright brothers. I'm in front of that, so that might happen again. But you take the Wright brothers. You know, I was born late in life to my parents, and when they were born, the Wright brothers were just bringing up their first airplane. But there's two guys who said man should be able to fly. Why can't we fly like the birds? So, you know, in their mind, they had the imagination of man flying. And then their imagination took them to an idea of something that looked like a bird that could fly. Then they had to learn some science, you see. Then you get into the data that's relevant to it. So every inventor there, and you take an Elon Musk, for example, in present day, and the Steve Jobs and so on. None of this existed until these guys had the vision, an idea, they had the imagination. And we were talking about Walt Disney earlier. There was a man who had tremendous imagination. And he had a hard time, but he communicated until he got the point through of getting people to invest and loan him money to bring up Disneyland. And they wanted to call it an amusement park, and he said it's not an amusement park. And when they wouldn't do what he wanted, he'd say, I'd take my debt elsewhere. So, but he had in his mind a world that he could create for children and their parents. Back then, you know, I know it's changed a lot now, but all of the people who had they had imagination, they also had brilliance, and they were pretty sane. The guys who got this done were pretty sane. And they kept at it until they got it done. Well, if you've kept at your work, and you know what you're trying to create, you're keeping at it until you get it done. But I do know that writers, especially because that's kind of a solitary event, it's not like being on a set or on a stage with other actors, that when we're by ourselves, we can say, well, why continue? Why should I continue? And I thought I might come at this from the reverse, because I like to come at things from the reverse. And I can share with you why it is that writers get discouraged. You want me to share that with you? Why it is you get discouraged? I got a couple of things to end with here. And I think this one will resonate. My favorite philosopher, who was also a brilliant science fiction writer and photographer, L. Ron Hubbard, he wrote an article once. And he was helping, I think this will help you. Little by little, here and there, every word that you utter, if it points in the direction of freedom and does not point in the direction of damnation, spreads and multiplies and goes and grows. It's a very funny thing which only an artist can truly understand, to do without the ultimate effect of your words. The artist who writes a story and then never hears the applause of the readers. The movie actor who stands in front of the camera and never hears the audience's roar in answer to his performance, which he has just turned in, but has only had the cameraman and assistant director and a couple of snide script girls watching him. Nobody gave him applause. And so do you seldom hear applause or hear the ultimate effect of the words which you utter. But these things continue to go like ripples in a pond of infinite size, and they continue to go. And just because you never see them come back is no reason they have not gone somewhere. And I would encourage you to remember that. It's very real to me about standing in front of the camera, because I did both theater and film and TV. And you know, when you're on the stage, your audience is right there. You can hear them laugh if there's something funny. You can hear them emote. You can feel the emotion coming back. You can feel the acknowledgement. What it is the absence of acknowledgement that discourages the writer. For that very reason, your words go out, but you don't get the acknowledgement back. And I remember when I first started doing TV and films, especially when I was doing comedy, you're there in front of the camera, and there's no response coming back at you. So you hope that the performance was what you want, but more importantly, you hope that when it all comes out the other end and somebody's watching it, that it produced an effect. But artists are usually left in that vacuum, not the directors, and eventually it comes out. But writers, you're in a solitary world, you get it published, and with book events and so on, you get some acknowledgement, but for the most part, authors do not receive the acknowledgement. And that can cause discouragement, or you feel that you're not getting through. So just remember, little by little, here and there, every word that you utter, if it points in the direction of freedom and does not point in the direction of damnation, spreads and multiplies and goes and grows. And that is our life's work. And I think if you kind of hold on to that, especially at moments when you get discouraged, and say, is anybody paying any attention? Am I getting through? Does anybody care? Yeah, they do. You have to have faith on that, though. That if somebody read it, how many of you have had somebody come up to you that read one of your books and just out of the blue or something said, I read this from you years ago, or you said this to me years ago, and I always remember that. It's happened, and it maybe didn't even happen when you were an author. It might have been in your career or something else that you were doing. It happens a great deal. That's the proof positive on that statement. That philosopher was correct. That it is said, you don't know what impact it has had, either at that moment or in the future life of that individual, where their mind remembers that you wrote it and they read it, or you said it and they heard it, and now it's of importance to them. So using imagination, you're at the highest level in the culture. Highest level. And problem solvers, if you look at that, you just cannot bring up a solution if all you got your attention on is the problem. Somebody has to have the imagination to create a solution, whether it's, how you destroyed a cake and you got to figure out how to get a dessert in there for a birthday party that's coming up, or you're right, it doesn't matter. We're artists in life. And so when we solve problems, I hope that when you leave here today that you remember in the rest of your life, not just as artists, every time you solve a problem, you are exercising your imagination. Because you can't do it without exercising imagination. With people with problems are stuck. As soon as you solve a problem, whatever it is, your imagination got developed. I think one of you asked me before that you sometimes are still trying to develop your imagination. Well, any problem in your life, exercise your imagination, that'll help. And then if you hang around people who are inventing things or talking about the future that way, that'll stimulate your imagination. Obviously, talking to one another does, but life will stimulate more of your imagination than you will of each other. Hope that was okay to say. I didn't mean to step on any toes, but it's because we're not in a bubble. That's what I said. Imagination is in your purview, period, as authors. But it is not your monopoly. So there's a whole world out there that every day is exercising imagination and creativity. And when you're around that, at least I have found that when I'm around that, it stimulates me. Now, I might exercise it and deploy it into one of my endeavors, but I love being around other creative people who are constantly looking to the future, constantly envisioning something better, something resolved, something bigger. Do any of you know what I'm talking about? That if you hang around other people, even if it might be a scientist, but just the imagination of the scientist and his perseverance, because they too have issues with that. All these other professions that have to exercise their imagination and creativity, they go through the same self-doubt. Is anybody listening? Is anybody going to finance this? Am I ever going to be able to bring this in reality? My late husband used to help inventors and help them get the financing for their projects. And inventors, they weren't neurotic. It was just their imagination. They had solved a problem and they knew in their mind, and maybe even in a prototype, that they could change the world with it. And then they were stuck with not enough people acknowledging what they had done, or in agreement with it. So our task goes beyond just our communication. And I wanted to end with, I have a friend, and he is a mortgage broker, but he also is a poet. And he writes a poem every day, and he publishes it online on his website, but every day. Now, poetry is not my biggest thing, okay? I'm a prose writer for sure, and a narrative and a storyteller. I'm a storyteller. And, but he does, I just admire a lot of his work, but this one came through last week, and I thought, I'm gonna take that over to Spokane. It's called A Timely Pearl of Wisdom, and I think it's apropos to what I've been sharing with you. Wherever in time that you are will determine your mental state, whether past, present, or future, is where you contemplate. Are you stuck in the past, or overwhelmed by the present? Or are you looking ahead at the canvas you have yet to invent? Because time can be your oyster. It can control you or set you free. Thinking in the future is the cure and the only way to be. And that's your world. So if other people don't get it, don't worry about it. Just stay in your world, but know that it's our job, I think, to help them see that. And so poet's words, which I couldn't have written quite that way, a philosopher's words, which brought me to the understanding of acknowledgments. I do know what it's like when nobody acknowledges what you did, and I understand that. But I want to leave you with this last thought like I began. The artist is in the lead position in any society and in any culture, period. Because you have to use your imagination to do what you do. And that includes painters, that includes musicians, it includes composers, it includes everyone in the arts per se. They will lead the culture because you bring it to life. Somehow you got it done. Somehow you got your books written and you got them out. And then they're in the world where other people can grab it, embrace it, and move forward with it. And because you, I would assume, are moving towards freedom rather than towards damnation in what you write. That is that little by little starting to change, ripple by ripple, little by little, from the existing situation to a better world. A better individual life, better family lives, better communities, better companies, everything. But it comes from somebody's imagination. Okay? Hope that was helpful. She said you might want to do question and answer.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I can't help but think that maybe your titles are prophetic. Do you think your books are prophetic?
Yes, they are. I am regarded as a writer of prescient fiction, and the books proved prophetic. And so that brought a whole other cadre of people around who said, okay, this woman can perceive, but imagination, where does the future come from? It comes from our imagination. So I was able to just create imaginatively what the villain would do. I came through the point of view of the real life mastermind and several others along the way who are trying to destroy the world and they want to take control of it. So I was able to ask myself the question, if I were him, if I were that person, how would I go about as a villain destroying all the good? Then my imagination traveled along that line. It proved to be very, very accurate in terms of what attack lines the enemy would use. Then I had to use my imagination for my heroes to create a solution. The fact that it played out real just tells you that when you're trained, I am a trained actress, and I know I am a student of the human mind and human behavior, have been for decades, and so I am able to predict what people will do if I understand what their objective is. So you have to do that too with your characters to make them very real. They have to have an objective, and they have to be believable and plausible to your reader. But yeah, that's prescient fiction right there. When you read it, you read the first book, check when it was published, and you'll go, oh my God, she wrote that before it happened.
You see some similarities playing out now
100%.
in our country?
When you read the novels, you'll go, I'm inside these novels living every bit of this, which means we better get to my solutions real fast. Seriously. because if I'm prescient on the situation, I was also prescient on the solutions. That's why people find them hopeful. Scary, but hopeful. Okay? Yeah.
You still write?
Yes. Yes, I do, but I'm also a podcaster and a commentary. And that other branch of the career is going, because a lot of people do ask for advice and input. And the other novel that's out is an inspirational autobiography, inspirational fiction. But I'm doing a lot of good in the country with these stories. This is absolutely stimulating the imaginations of everybody and giving them the acknowledgement, because it isn't like Americans are stupid. But they are being, if they're being misled, all of a sudden they read something and go, I knew it. I knew it, I knew it. So I'm trying to acknowledge the brilliance and the wisdom and the character and the intelligence of this country. Yeah.
What is your podcast?
I have cards up here. It's called The Clear View with Lee
Awesome.
Kessler.
I
And I come in at a very high level view. It's not my job to rehash all the information that other brilliant podcasters are doing. I'm not day-to-day like that. I
Okay.
come in like from the mountaintop
Okay.
and direct people's attention to what's being missed or is obfuscated in the clouds kind of thing.
Okay.
And that's what I'm doing. You can just take one of the cards there.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's fun, isn't it? Did you all know that you're leading the whole world? Don't forget that I said that, because it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That the future is going to be created by somebody's imagination, good or bad. Our job is to make certain it's good and to just keep stimulating. And of course, you keep writing, that does it too. The fact that you're all so prolific, you have new books that you gave me and new things, and it's cool. Yeah, yeah.
And the L. Ron Hubbard quote, where is that from?
Well, that was from a lecture he gave, and I don't remember if I have that with me. If you want to email me, I can get it for you. It might be inside, because he was a philosopher and he did a lot of training and education. He was a great educator, so I don't know where it's from. But it's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, I like it.
He himself was a screenwriter and a science fiction writer and a great author. He did a lot of nonfiction, tremendous amount of work. But he had obviously encountered that thing of no acknowledgement. And it's true in the arts, because especially in writing and acting, you don't know unless you're on the stage if you impact it. Especially with writing, who knows where your books have gone? You have no idea who's handed off your books to who and some paragraph in there. Generally, if somebody wants to use it or quote it, they'll ask permission. Can I quote you in your book? But people in life just say, I just read this great book. I read Elena's book, and there was this paragraph in there that struck me. They might not even remember the whole book. It's like you were pointing out, it was the last short in her book. Yeah, about the television. That's the one that reached you. Yeah.
Just a comment, what you said reminds me of, there are folks that maybe have never opened a Lord of the Rings or a Tolkien book, but many, many people quote where Frodo says, I wish the ring had never come to me. People will quote Gandalf and say, so do all who live to see such times, but as not for them to decide. All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you. And people use that quote all the time, and it's very prophetic and very, has all these philosophy aspects to it, and they may have never even read a book.
It raises the person up, that particular thought. And even going back to Star Wars, there is no try, only do.
Yes.
And but that's a truth. Well, what you're talking about is truth.
Yes.
See, when writers have inserted truth in their novels, the truth comes out and it hits somebody takes it and runs with it. That's what I want. I assume that's what you want too, that this whole thing ain't going to depend on just you. That somebody's going to take something from what you've written and make something even greater with it. Not necessarily something they're going to write, but something they're going to live. We're artists in life and artists for life. But I look at everybody as an artist in life. Some of them are just not good at it. And then if they can get their lives a little better organized, they can be more artistic in life. That's that combination of sanity and brilliance along with imagination.
Yes.
You kind of have to have it all in there. The sanity part's a bit challenging, all right, with some. But it's there. That's the other very hopeful thing. We're born. We carry potential with us automatically. Environment does influence, but you can stimulate. And any of you teachers in your profession? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. That it was words that you said or things that you did, you challenged the student and it got better and better. and they took your acknowledgement. Because the teacher-pupil relationship really is about communication and acknowledgement. And they better get it, or they don't know if they're going down the right path. I'm from a family of educators. I'm an educator myself, and that's a huge problem in the school system out there. No acknowledgement of what's going through the person's mind, let alone how to get it communicated out for the teacher and them to communicate back and forth. But acknowledgement is great, and probably we all have stories about teachers that they acknowledged, but they invalidated us. They made us wrong or feel bad. But that's the ones we dislike, and we're not trying to copy them. The ones we probably all tried to copy are those teachers that acknowledged what we said and they made us feel better. They validated us. They might have made a correction or asked us to look at something, but they validated us. Well, that's your job, in my opinion. Fiction or nonfiction is to validate the existence of other human beings. Because that last novel, the final one in the series, ends up in transhumanism, which is very real. And at that point, we are no longer human. So we have to have these solutions come to life. I've imagined them. I was telling you they're going to come out in computer games. But it's in all of us, greatness is.
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
In the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned how important it is sometimes to meet a right person in your life and how they influence us. And today you are this person because I was almost discouraged in my life and you put the encouragement in it. And I thank you so much for it.
You're most welcome, Anna. And I guess you're the reason I changed the speech on the way over here.
Probably.
I was
It's
going
all
to talk about
connected.
something else, something
Wow.
predictable. No, that's the nature of
Draw
it.
that into existence.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, I trust that, yeah.
Wow.
So do you have any specific ideas about ways to improve how you access your imagination? Like for me, if I needed something, a solution to a problem that I'm writing, I meditate and in 2 or 3 days it comes to me.
Good. Yeah, see, all you're doing is just relaxing with it and just letting what's there come out. Because if it's a problem you were having, it's a problem that you created. So if you just relax with it, you can get past it. Your mind will come up with a solution. That is your imagination. Anytime we come up with a solution, particularly one that works, is imagination. But even the thought process, because imagine some of you write and then discard stuff, right? And go back and rewrite it and whatnot. Well, your imagination was at work, and then when you read it again, you say, I can do better on that. Yeah. So it's always there. That's what I want you to know. It's always there. And it's in everybody. And the world would be a lot better if everyone had the stick-to-itiveness and the willingness to get past the barriers and the imagination to reveal a better world, a future, something better. If we all had that, and the only way they're going to get it is when the artist leads. It's one of the reasons, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but I tend to sometimes anyway. I was a musician, and I can't stand rap. I can't stand rap. I like almost every kind of music. I'm quite eclectic, except I can't stand rap. Now, I appreciate the poetry ability to improvise and just come up with poems like that on the spot. And I've been around some when they've maybe been at an event which was family-oriented, and they're given a subject, and the next thing you know, I appreciate that. But it's the content of that, as the philosopher said, that leads towards freedom, not towards damnation. That I listen to that and I go, that does not stimulate anybody's imagination in a positive direction. So I'm not going down that path. So I just kind of dismiss rap as a music that I don't like. I don't like there's a lot of things I don't like musically about it. But when I look at the content, they are obviously imaginative. They're obviously creative. But that third ingredient in there, sanity. Who lives their life to berate and tear down other people? That's not the artist I'm talking about. That's not you all. The artist is the true artist. They're the visionary. They always have been, always will be, from the Roman plays, the Greek playwrights, everything, all the way through. You're like, why is Shakespeare still so popular? That guy, talk about somebody who was prophetic. All of his plays still are real to us today because he was revealing the human condition and revealing truths. That transcended centuries. The Greek plays and the Romans have transcended other centuries, more centuries. So the artist has always been there, and we're all fascinated when archaeological digs, when we find the artwork that was communicated there, that told the story of the people, and the Native Americans, Indians here in the United States, we love to come upon all that, because art communicates across all time. And it can be used for good or bad. But you're here for the music, yeah.
So you find that imagination is like a muscle that you use that gets better?
Yeah,
the more
yes,
you use it?
exactly. What he asked was, it's like a muscle that the more you use it, the better it gets. Yes, because that's why I said if there's too much incoming from somebody else and you're watching too many movies or TV or streaming or whatever else, that's inbound to you, and somebody else used their imagination, created something with it, and they've produced an effect with you. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but when you have a whole generation that everything is inbound and nothing is outbound, that muscle of imagination has atrophied. It's there. And that's why I think children's books are becoming so popular. For the last 10, 15 years, the writers of children's books are having tremendous impact because the story is there, but it's told in a simple way. But Lord knows, a child has to exercise their imagination. Even the parent reading it to them has to exercise the imagination to help them understand the story sometimes. And I think that's important, children's books and children's stories, if they're good ones, because it starts the child imagining. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about your book covers and your satisfaction with them, and how much you had a hand in the way they finally look.
I make the final approval, but I didn't design the covers. I have an artist who designed them for me. And she's done all 4 books, plus the other novel, A Child of Arthur. And she's very, very good. So she reads the novel, then we talk about what I want to make certain is there, at least with the first one when we were doing it. And then she goes to work and finds the photos and merges stuff, especially if you look at that first one, merges things. And then she sends me a lot of different options. Then we narrow it down, and usually one of them jumps right out at me that this totally communicates. Because the first one there, you can see a chessboard, and you see people obviously from different countries, different attire, and so on. Because the actual mastermind that created the havoc of the first one to start it in this century was the mastermind of Al Qaeda, but it wasn't bin Laden. So that's the story of who was it really, and what was his strategy through psychological operations to bring the United States down from within. So that's a story that played out for real, and but it's laid out there, the strategies through the characters. And so when I saw that, I knew immediately. She had the chessboard, which I needed because his opponent is my fictitious hero, an 18-year-old Grandmaster chess champion. So when I looked at that, we didn't have to make many modifications. This last one is pretty layered. Most people have not even spotted the white hat hacker on that book cover. So she's really good, but there's no way, I don't have that talent. So I hired someone else who could read my novel, and she's always hit it spot on because the novel impacted her. Then she would bring up something that I liked. I've never had to find somebody else. Editors, yes, but not my cover artist. Plus we had, because it was a series, they had to look like they're part of the series. Same artist really helps, you know? Cool. All right. Well, it's been fun being here with you. Let me turn the microphone back over. I guess we're having food next, right?